Close your eyes.
This world is not what you think it is.
Close your eyes.
This world is not what you think it is.
Now, the North Pole is the center of an ocean 10,000 feet deep. The South Pole, the center of a plateau 10,000 feet high. The North Polar Sea is surrounded by continents slightly frozen. The Antarctic continent is surrounded by a belt of ice, frozen seas of at least 1,200 miles thick. Now, the south is a plateau. It gets, in some places, 14,000 feet up. I've been over areas about 13,000. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored. It happens to be an untouched reservoir of natural resources. And you know, as the world shrinks with an ever-increasing acceleration, far-flung places once useless, like we thought the North Pole was, and no man's land, become very useful.
People get really confused by the cardinal directions and how they work on the flat Earth. The only real direction we know is north.
Yeah.
North is the center, where the compass points to, and that the pole star
Yeah.
is right above it, which is the one unmoving star that all the other stars revolve around.
Yeah.
So there's a middle point on Earth that corresponds with a middle point on the sky, and that is north.
Yeah.
Every line outwards straight from that is a
Goes south.
southward line.
Yeah.
A circle
Yeah.
around them with
That
Polaris 90 degrees
Yeah.
to either shoulder is an east,
East
or
or
west
west.
course. People are confused about the ball Earth because they're told that if you travel east in one direction, just keep going straight, you'll come back to the place you started. Now, first of all, nobody's ever done that.
Yeah.
When they were sailing, they had to sail around the continents anyway.
Yeah.
So nobody has or could go in a literal straight line and
East
come
or
back
west,
to the place.
except for Captain Cook and that who were trying to.
He wasn't going in a straight line either.
No, because they were trying to hug
They were
the
trying to find an
coastline.
inlet of the
Yeah.
Antarctic coastline.
And they never
Captain
did.
Cook, Captain George Nares, and Captain James Clark Ross
Yeah.
are three people that had big expeditions, many years long, 3 to 4 years, and
More than
charted
50,000 miles,
60 to 70,000 miles, never finding an inlet to the Antarctic
All getting
ice
back
wall.
to the starting point, right. And now none of us are allowed to go down there.
Right.
I mean, in
and
the
if
same
you talk about an
sense.
ice wall, it's the craziest thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have footage, great footage now. We look at John Thor's channel,
Oh, he's great.
Antarctic ice wall. He's
Yeah.
got some footage that somebody posted, and it just goes on from hundreds
Yeah.
of miles.
Yeah.
You can just see, it looks to be about, like they say, a 200 or so foot ice wall that just, and then a plateau
Yeah.
over it.
Yeah, just
Which makes perfect sense. We're in like a puddle.
Yeah.
The oceans must be contained. All water needs to be contained.
Yeah.
So it makes perfect sense that there would be a container of some sort on the outer circumference, and it would be risen above the oceans to some degree. And of course, those explorers, they never went up on that plateau. They just
Yeah.
sailed around it.
they can't get
The
up on
the first operation to go up on it was called Operation High Jump.
Yeah.
To jump
Get up,
on
there was
the
that
wall.
bird,
That was
Admiral
Admiral Byrd, and he was a 33rd degree
Freemason.
Freemason. He took like 4,000 military men with him, I think, for the trip.
And didn't he go on
only came back with
TV in
half
front
them.
of a flat Earth map?
In front of a flat Earth map, and he said that he found land the size of America beyond Antarctica.
Yeah.
So whether that's true or not, it's hearsay.
He is over the Shackleton ice shelf, named for the great English explorer who kept returning to the Antarctic until death, so often escaped, kept its rendezvous with him. The smooth shelf roughens. Dark rocks, called nunataks, appear above the ice. Then rugged mountain ranges as far as the eye can see. Bunger leans forward in amazement. His eyes have caught a sudden and unbelievable change in scenery. The universal white has turned to chocolate brown, dotted with blue. A cameraman goes into action. 300 square miles of land without snow. Land that might be in New Mexico or Arizona. Pictures alone will prove Bunger has discovered a warm oasis in the shadow of the pole. It is for such supreme moments as this that men brave the hardships of exploration. The astounding, undreamed of fact is that they are over a chain of warm water lakes whose shores, except for small patches, are free of ice and snow. Commander Bunger circles the largest lake in sight, 5 miles long. He comes in to make a landing. Water temperatures must be recorded. Samples taken. He finds the water fresh, the temperature 38 degrees Fahrenheit. On the shores are vast deposits of coal and of minerals of the utmost importance to civilization.
Byrd is among the last aboard. He can now report to Admiral Nimitz, Operation High Jump completed.
Close your eyes.
Welcome to another episode of 60-Second Freezing Cool Antarctic Facts. This is brought to you by the Worm Herders of Antarctica. I'm your host, Polar Trek teacher Kevin Dickerson. We only have 1 minute, so focus up.
Good evening, and evening it is. It's 10:30 at night. See our beautiful sunset out here in the Ross Sea, McMurdo Sound. I'm on Ross Island. That's where McMurdo Science Station is. And I'm going to show you about how compasses work. So here's my compass I brought from home. And there's a difference between magnetic north and geometric north, geographical north. Geographical north is the North Pole, where all the lines of longitude meet. The magnetic South Pole is going to be where the magnetic pole lines up. And just so happens that the magnetic South Pole right now isn't even on the continent of Antarctica. It's off of Antarctica. And there's a thing called declination. That's the difference between the two, geographic and magnetic. Currently, it's about 140 degrees difference, which means that if your compass did work, it would lead you in almost the complete opposite direction. So I thought I'd show you this though. Here's my compass, and you can see that white needle is pointing down. Look at as I'm rotating around, that compass doesn't even spin. The needle stays the same. That white needle is dragging down on the bottom of the compass. So kind of fun to play with, but not real useful. I mean, you could rotate it around and try to get that off of the bottom of the compass, but for the most part, not real useful. Now we have a GPS here. Show you my GPS. It has a compass on it, compass page. And the key thing you need to remember with the GPS is you got to be moving if you want to get the direction that you're going. So if you'll look at this, you can see we're headed about in a south-southwest direction. And if you look out, you can see White Island and Black Island. And right between those is where the South Pole is. So as long as you're moving, the GPS compass can be reliable. We've used it out in the field on this trip. When we get dropped off by helicopters, we use GPS to know where we're going and how to navigate back and where we're going to get our samples from. If we have any special finds, then we'll mark them with GPS. If we find like seal mummies, dead seals that dry up, possibly hundreds of years old, we'll mark those with GPS, so we'll know where those are at. But there you go. Do compasses work in Antarctica? Now you know. And it just took 3 minutes. Enjoy the sunset.
Close your eyes.
Welcome everyone. This video is in response to the many globe propagandists who demand that I show a picture of the edge of the flat earth. For the dozens of these ball-loving zealots with multiple sock puppet accounts, who repeat this mantra daily, your demand is ridiculous. But you probably already knew that, right? And that's why you probably keep demanding it. It's actually pretty funny that I just got one of these take a picture comments an hour ago. I'm going to prove in this video that independent travel is not allowed under the Antarctic Treaty System. That fact alone should cause any thinking person to begin questioning our official models. Because something big is being hidden from we, the plebeians, and we're not talking about penguins. For most flat earthers, based on the information that we can reasonably gather, Antarctica constitutes the outer rim of the known world. In other words, Antarctica is likely the shoreline to all of the world's oceans. Like a ring magnet, north constitutes the center of our flat Earth map, and south is every direction away from the northern center. And before I get a dozen comments claiming that such a magnet is impossible, here's a ring magnet shown here. Notice that south is in every direction away from the center north magnetic pole. This is where the 60th south parallel is on a Mercator map. This is the 60th south parallel on a potential flat Earth azimuthal equidistant map. It seems that Antarctica constitutes the circular shore of the known world. So, demanding that I take a picture of a possible edge of the Earth, if any, requires me to not only travel below the 60th south parallel, represented by the circle, but also to cross the entire breadth of Antarctica. According to official numbers, Antarctica has a diameter of roughly 3,400 miles, and so that means our trek will include a long boat ride for hundreds of miles below the 60th south parallel, plus a minimum 6,800 mile round-trip hike across Antarctica. That's assuming the official model is correct. Maybe we could fly to one of the ceremonial pole areas, but that would still leave at least a 3,400 mile hike. In addition, we wouldn't know for sure whether the plane trip itself was interfering with our results, since the pilot would have to follow a designated path outlined by the Antarctic Treaty System, and who truly knows what direction that is until we get there. In order to be fully confident, we would really need to stick to the ground and have control over our own pathway, where we can control our direct southerly route opposite of the northern magnetic pole. Now, whether Antarctica is a smaller continent next to the outer rim, or whether Antarctica is indeed the shoreline of the known world, I don't know the answer. Flat earthers don't have a government budget to spend $1 billion to hire hundreds of cartographers and fleets of boats and planes to map the entire world. But even if flat earthers had the money, we would still run into the Antarctic problem, which is the point of this video. So, what is the Antarctic problem? It is the fact that independent travel is not allowed below the 60th south parallel in any reasonable manner to make any determination as to whether Antarctica is the shoreline boundary circumscribing the known world, or whether Antarctica is simply a continent a little north of the true but unnamed southerly shoreline of the Earth's oceans. For all we know, Antarctica may be an infinite plain that is uninhabitable at further distances. Again, we don't know. But, as I will describe in this video, I suspect that Antarctica is the shoreline circumscribing the known world due to the unbelievable restrictions placed on travel there. Excluding a couple of questionable claims, the total lack of north-south circumnavigation only proves the same. But if I'm not allowed by our governments to independently travel below the 60th south parallel and then to traverse Antarctica over 6,800 miles, then I cannot take a picture of a theoretical edge, dome, or those other lands beyond the South Pole, whatever the case may be. But you probably don't quite grasp how much area is really being blocked off under the Antarctic Treaty System. Let's look at it from the alleged 60th north parallel, because this will give you an idea of the tremendous area blocked off to independent exploration. This is the area of the 60th north parallels. As you can see, the 60th north parallel includes all of northern Canada, Alaska, much of Russia, including St. Petersburg and other major cities, Finland, Sweden, Norway, Iceland, Greenland. It is huge. Now, why in the world is this much area blocked off at the south? Do you really think it's because of penguins?
You see, first there was just one, now there's thousands of them.
Are they trying to tell us something?
So what's the problem?
Well, among other things, we are messing with their food chain.
And we have got to do something about it.
We suggest a ban on all marine harvesting.
Do you think the child propaganda from Happy Feet is true? The Antarctic Treaty was executed in 1959 and has been in place ever since. Think about it. No country had any real alleged concerns about the environment at that time. One of the more interesting facts is that the Soviet Union also ratified the treaty, and did so from the beginning on December 1st, 1959. Do you really think the Soviets were truly concerned about the penguins and the fragile Antarctic environment? In other words, America, the USSR, and the rest of the major countries of the world remain partners in generally closing Antarctica throughout most of the so-called fake space race, the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, the fake moon landings, most of the Cold War, the Vietnam War, the Six-Day War, the Soviet-Afghan War, and the collapse of the Soviet Union, which at that time Russia continued as a signatory in 1992. That's some peculiar cooperation transcending international conflicts, don't you think? Do you really think that the vast resources and strategic military benefits of Antarctica were multilaterally put aside because of penguins? Even North Korea has been a signatory since 1987. For some strange reason, the Antarctic Treaty has remained sacrosanct for nearly 60 years, regardless of worldwide conflicts. For the reasonable, objective person, alarm bells should be going off right now. As I was preparing this video, I found something else that's interesting. Out of all the flags of all the countries across the Earth, can you guess which one only shows a map of the country as the emblem of the country? You guessed it. Only one. Antarctica. Yeah, the one country they want you to know the shape of. That doesn't reek of programming, does it? Let me make this clear from the beginning. Travel to Antarctica is more difficult than travel to a military base. Sure, the military base may have a visitor shop near the entrance, but if you go beyond that visitor shop or another designated travel area without clearance, you're going to get arrested, or something worse. I'm sure I already have a few globe shields ready to pounce, armed with various inanities to counter my statement, but let's ignore the global spin. This video is about evidence and facts and the reasonable assumptions based thereon. So let's decide to take a theoretical trip across Antarctica to find the edge, if any. I'm not talking about going to the visitor center along the edge of Antarctica, or an overly expensive cruise to a small ice shelf along the edge with a small excursion, or a flight to one of the multiple ceremonial poles, and then straight back again. Yeah, that's not strange at all. I must reiterate, because I will get a dozen comments telling me to take a cruise or that someone's best friend went to Antarctica. I am not talking about a trip to one of the few designated tourist locations of Antarctica. I'm talking about a real trek, pointed directly south across the entire 3,400-mile breadth of Antarctica and back again to determine whether Antarctica circumscribes the known world and to possibly determine whether there's an edge, a dome, or whatever, and then take a picture of it. I'm talking about repeating the trek of Admiral Byrd and discovering that area as big as the United States that has never been seen by a human being on the other side of the South Pole, full of minerals and such just waiting to be explored.
But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
Okay, let's get started with our theoretical trip. So what is required to trek across the entire breadth of Antarctica? Now, I'm in the United States, and so we're going to examine it from the position of a slave of the U.S. But the rules are going to be the same for all 53 signatory countries of the Antarctic Treaty, and everyone else, since these countries all enforce the same provisions. To begin with, we need to understand that anything below the 60th south parallel is referred to as the Antarctic Treaty Area. What does that mean? That means I'm generally not allowed within hundreds of miles of Antarctica. from approximately 400 to 900 miles without obtaining a permit to do so. Now, the US government has recorded that some sailors have seen the mountain ranges of Antarctica at 300 miles distance while sailing. Of course, 300 miles should be impossible on the globe with a curvature drop of 11.4 miles, but the 60th parallel is between 400 and 900 miles away from the shoreline of Antarctica. Even under a flat Earth, that's a lot of lower atmosphere to see through, also referred to as atmospheric extinction factor, and a lot of angular size reduction. Despite the claims of the ignorant globe zealots, you can't see through that much lower atmosphere. In other words, I can't even see Antarctica from the ocean without first obtaining a permit from the US State Department, or whatever department that controls that in your country. Taking a trip to the 60th South Parallel isn't going to accomplish anything, and so we're stuck with getting a government permit. So let's go through the steps to obtaining a permit from the US State Department. This is the handbook of the Antarctic Treaty System. These are the rules that govern all signatories to the treaty. We'll be citing to it regularly as it lays down the rules that govern the Antarctic Treaty beyond the fluff of the treaty language itself. Most importantly, we're going to look at the rules governing non-governmental activities located here, and some of the rules regarding the protection of the environment located here. Now, as a US slave, this is the first form you'll have to submit to get approved to travel to Antarctica. The form itself seems rather innocuous until you understand exactly what is involved in the application process. In summary, Antarctica is treated as a giant natural reserve. Like a military base, all activities and pathways in Antarctica must be approved. This is unlike any other area in the world, except maybe a place like North Korea. So, when I say that no independent travel is allowed below the 60th South Parallel, I'm stating an admitted fact well recorded as international law. The protocol states, as a matter of principle, that all activities are to be planned and conducted on the basis of information sufficient to evaluate their possible impact on the Antarctic environment and its associated ecosystems, and on the value of Antarctica for the conduct of scientific research. Organizers should be aware that the environmental protocol requires that activities shall be modified, suspended, or cancelled if they result or threaten to result in impacts upon the Antarctic environment or dependent or associated ecosystems. If you visit Russia, with a Russian visa for example, are you limited to one particular neighborhood and certain pathways? For those who visit America as a tourist, are you restricted to New York City? Or are you generally allowed to travel around America? No one is just allowed to travel around Antarctica. All of your activities, vehicles, and pathways must be approved, but it gets much worse. Now, how many genuine people watching this video think that the purpose of seeing the edge, the dome, or the extended plain beyond Antarctica would be approved by the US State Department and the other myriad of agencies? Are you ready to litigate the matter when some State Department official arbitrarily says something like, "I think your expedition is frivolous and would be too damaging to the environment, especially in the light of the frivolity of the expedition"? I don't think a court will overturn that decision, especially when treaty law supersedes any rights you may think you have. So, we're going to have to come up with some fake expedition that will somehow get approved. Let's say we're a tree-hugging Luciferian geologist conducting a comprehensive analysis of the global carbon footprint on Antarctica and its flora and fauna. I think that sounds plausible, and so we could hypothetically fake our way in with respect to our purpose, but it will be tricky. Okay, I'm not advocating that anyone break the law, this is all theoretical. That brings us to the next point. Entire swaths of land are entirely off limits to all travel. These are called specially protected areas. It's pretty much guaranteed that no one is going to get a permit to go through a specially protected area. If my math is right, that's 1,373 square miles that are allegedly specially protected areas. You can see the maps on the websites, but I don't have time to plot all of them. Now I agree, that's not huge in comparison to the total alleged area of Antarctica. but I believe there's a distinct possibility that those swaths of land could be coordinated in such a way as to prevent me from going through Antarctica easily. So, right from the beginning, my route may be extra hard, especially if mountain pathways are blocked and the areas are much larger than claimed due to likely globe distance shenanigans. But let's go ahead and assume we can navigate around those prohibited, specially protected areas. Next, no motorized equipment is allowed at all for non-governmental personnel. Page 308 states, do not use aircraft, vessels, small boats, or other means of transport in ways that disturb wildlife either at sea or on land. That seems kind of hard and very subjective, doesn't it? Antarctica itself is supposed to have a diameter of 3,400 miles. That means no motorized equipment for at least a 6,800 mile round trip? That sounds pretty damn impossible, right? Especially if Antarctica is much bigger than what is claimed. What about sled dogs? Surely they'll be allowed. What's that? Sled dogs aren't even allowed? Okay, so our trip is now limited to a very long hike in insanely harsh conditions over an extreme rise of elevation. On a side note, Antarctica has the highest average elevation of any alleged continent, but I'm sure that's just coincidence, right? But getting back to our insane trip, we not only have to walk at least 6,800 miles, mostly depending on when we need to turn around, we must also tread extremely lightly as walking on plants in Antarctica is prohibited. I can't damage plants or frighten wildlife on a 6,800 mile journey in a wilderness? I wonder if the Lewis and Clark expedition was limited by such requirements. Good luck traversing 6,800 miles on foot without damaging plants or frightening wildlife with no motorized equipment. I'm not saying that we couldn't figure out a way to get around these big issues, or maybe we could just, theoretically ignore the issues once we get there, but again, I'm not advocating that anyone break the law. I'm saying that these are listed enforcement rules under the Antarctic Treaty System. And so think of how easy it would be for one of the many international bureaucrats reviewing our application to deny a permit to trek across Antarctica based on this one plausible excuse. Sorry, you're going to end up walking on plants and scaring birds at least one time during your 6,800 mile journey, and the Antarctic Treaty System prohibits such activities. Application denied. For argument's sake, let's just assume we're going to figure out a way to get around that. Don't ask me how. The next issue is, how are we going to carry all that food and fuel for heat? And don't think that the Antarctic Treaty System isn't concerned with how we store our fuel. The United States itself is roughly 2,500 miles across. So imagine the difficulty of hauling food, climbing at extremely high and unknown elevations, and carrying all of your extremely warm gear and supplies across the United States from coast to coast and back again, all on foot with no food stops along the way. And don't forget, we're going to have to haul our poop as well. You are going to have to drag your poop with you on your 6,800 mile Antarctic hike. But it gets worse. Your poop is regulated by a different pseudo-government agency, the National Science Foundation. Here's where you can learn about what permit is required if you wanted to dispose of your poop on your 6,800 mile journey if you don't want to carry it. Could you imagine for your next trip to France and the custom agent saying, "Welcome to France. By the way, no vehicles are allowed, no animals are allowed, do not walk on any plants, and here's a bag for your poop. Be sure to bring it back full." If you don't want to carry your poop, you're going to have to get a permit from the National Science Foundation. Enjoy your stay. But here's another and potentially bigger problem. What if there is no edge when you get there, but conditions only get worse? How many years of supplies can one carry by a handheld sled and some skis? What if Antarctica goes beyond 3,400 miles? What then? When do you turn your back, and how do you prove it? Because the globe shows are just going to call you a liar anyways. Any sane person right now would have to admit that our little trip is impossible, but we have a lot of paid-for apologists for our slave masters who will still somehow claim that I'm lying when I say that independent travel in Antarctica is prohibited. But we're not done. Going back to our form DS4131, In addition to disclosure to other parties to the treaty, the information provided may be shared with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to ensure compliance with 40 CFR Part 8 Environmental Impact Assessment of Non-Governmental Activities in Antarctica, as well as with other relevant U.S. agencies. This brings us to one of the most important issues facing us. What is an environmental impact assessment? No country, even North Korea, would ever require an environmental assessment before traveling across their country. It's insane. Here's the definition of an environmental impacts assessment in the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations. Environmental impact assessment means the environmental review process required by the provisions of this part and by Annex 1 of the Protocol, and includes preparation by the operator and U.S. government review of an environmental document and public access to and circulation of environmental documents to other parties and the Committee on Environmental Protection as required by Annex 1 of the Protocol. Well, let's see what the Committee for Environmental Protection says. Article 8 of the Protocol requires the parties to conduct environmental impact assessments for the Antarctic activities and provides 3 levels of assessment according to the potential impacts of each activity. The procedures for environmental impact assessment are detailed in Annex 1 of the Protocol. If a proposed activity is determined in a preliminary stage of assessment to have less than a minor or transitory impact, it may proceed. If an activity is determined as likely to have a minor or transitory impact, then an initial environmental evaluation must be prepared. If an initial environmental evaluation indicates the potential for more than a minor or transitory impact, or if such impact is otherwise determined to be likely, a comprehensive environmental evaluation must be prepared. Draft CEEs are made publicly available and considered by the CEP, which then advises the ATCM, and that's a Antarctic Treaty Consultative Meeting. Comments provided by other parties in the ATCM must be addressed in a final CEE, which is used as a basis for making a decision about whether and how the activity is conducted. Same law as here. It is the comprehensive environmental evaluation that's going to kill our expedition. Here's the regulation, and this applies to all signatories, including North Korea. Any operator who plans a non-governmental expedition that would require a CEE must submit a draft of the CEE by December 1st of the preceding year. Within 15 days of receipt of the draft CEE, EPA will send it to the Department of State, which will circulate it to all parties to the Protocol, and forward it to the Committee for Environmental Protection established by the Protocol, and publish notice of receipt of the CEE and request for comments on the CEE in the Federal Register, and will provide copies to any person upon request. The EPA will accept public comments on the CEE for a period of 90 days following notice in the Federal Register. The EPA, in consultation with other interested federal agencies, will evaluate the CEE to determine if the CEE meets the requirements under Article 8, Annex 1 to the Protocol, and the provisions of this part, and will transmit its comments to the operator within 120 days following publication in the Federal Register of the notice of availability of the CEE. So, now, I'm sure most of you probably just went brain dead when I read that, so let me explain it. First, our CEE, that's our Comprehensive Environmental Evaluation, must pass the EPA's initial review. Not an easy task. Next, the Department of State, along with its Office of Ocean and Polar Affairs Bureau of Oceans, Environment and Science, must review it. Next, it will be sent to all parties. That's 100 countries, by the way. Next, your assessment must be approved by an international bureaucracy called the Committee for Environmental Protection. After their highly unlikely approval, the EPA will then publish it in the United States Federal Register. Now, why would they do that? Because any supposed private tree-hugging group can now sue to stop you from going there. Once that is done, assuming you haven't been sued, then the EPA, along with all of the other interested federal agency, whatever the hell that means, evaluates it again. Do you realize the amount of legal work this would entail? Do you realize how easy it would be for any one of hundreds of entities or thousands of bureaucrats to halt your expedition? Again, this applies to all countries. One person in the comments of my last Antarctic video claimed that it wasn't necessary in the United Kingdom. Well, he lied. The Environmental or Madrid Protocol is part of the Antarctic Treaty System and applies to all countries. Here is the requirement on the UK application if you're interested. As explained above, for every person in the United States who wants to get a permit to travel across Antarctica has to first submit the environmental impact assessment to the EPA. You know, the freedom-loving EPA.
Beware! Beware! Time is short! EPA! 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 Believe me! Believe me! Thanks for listening.
Lost them, sir. Well, then you find them, and you get them back in the dome. And to make sure nobody else gets out, I want roving death squads around the perimeter 24/7.
Do you know what the environmental impact statement costs? This is very similar. A typical environmental impact statement costs from $250,000 to $2 million. And those are a lot easier than this comprehensive environmental analysis required under the Antarctic Treaty. For us, the biggest problem is that you would have to incur the expense of the environmental impact assessment before you know if you're denied, due to whatever arbitrary claim a bureaucrat can think of. Do you see how difficult this environmental assessment will be? How would one know the environmental impact on an area which you've never been to, and very little information would be available? With a normal environmental assessment, you'd be able to send an engineering firm to the location to make the assessment with attorneys who would draft the statement. In this case, you can't send an engineering firm all the way to Antarctica, and so you have to hire Antarctic experts who have been to the same places you're planning on walking through. Now, how many of those do you think there are? I say that we can safely assume that the price of getting an environmental impacts assessment approved by the EPA and the International Agency would cost millions, assuming no supposed private group sues you once it's published in the Federal Register. Do you have more than $2 million to spend for an environmental impact assessment? And then, what if the EPA or the Committee for Environmental Protection or one of the other agencies says no? Maybe that not enough information was provided. Are you ready to spend another $2 million to fight that in court? But you still have to have your purpose approved. Do you see the problem there? You would likely spend millions on getting the environmental impact statement, only later to have some official at the International Committee for Environmental Protection reject your purpose in Antarctica. You would truly gamble millions in this silly endeavor. To learn more about the environmental assessment procedures with the Committee for Environmental Protection, you can research it here. See also, let's get to the final issue we're going to run into. 7 countries claim territorial rights to various parts of Antarctica. Argentina, Australia, Chile, France, New Zealand, Norway, and the United Kingdom all maintain territorial claims in Antarctica. I did find it interesting that the USSR never claimed territorial rights to Antarctica. Yeah. I'm willing to bet that my trip across Antarctica is going to need other permits from other countries based only on territorial claims. Getting more permits or visas from other countries who have alleged territory in Antarctica? Yeah, that shouldn't add too much to our already strained budget. Now, just for the propagandist who's going to claim that's not true, I quote, "The Antarctic Treaty puts aside the potential for conflict over sovereignty for providing that nothing that occurs while the treaty is enforced will enhance or diminish territorial claims." Meaning, the territorial claims trump. So, the next dumb shill who demands that you take a picture of the edge or that anyone can go to Antarctica and see for themselves that it's a continent, be sure to point out what a damn idiot they are, and then share this video because everything in here is fact that anyone can look up, and I'll try to have all the links in the description. Of course, the lying minions from the Ministry of Truth will spin and call you names, but at least the rest of the world will see the liars for who they truly are. This is Taboo Conspiracy, signing off.
Welcome to reality.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jaronism, back with another video for you today. Wanted to talk a little bit about Antarctica. So recently, someone who has been studying flat Earth decided to look down into Antarctica, and he found out some things that he did not know.
Because I've been concentrating on Antarctica, I started looking into it. Never really had the compunction to investigate Antarctica before.
So I guess he had done months of searching and studying flat Earth, but never got around to looking into Antarctica. So he says,
it's the first time I've really looked into these maps, and it seems that everybody, including the Royal Tub Thumping Brass Band, has marched through Antarctica, and the flat earthers don't know about it.
As soon as he did, he saw that flights took place that go across it. He saw New Year's Eve parties. He saw tourists, and so he came to the conclusion that any good researcher would have come to, that all the flat earth researchers are stupid or they're lying. That's a good conclusion, huh, mate? Well, let me fill you in on a little research on Antarctica that I did, and maybe if you're the good Christian that you say you are, Tiger Dan, you'll apologize for calling me stupid and a liar and anything else that you said. But I've actually done tons of research, just like all of the other flat earthers that I know of have been looking at this stuff for a long time. And we simply didn't search for something on YouTube and then claim it to be a fact. That's not good research. So I'm going to show you some different things about Antarctica, so hopefully you see the difference between good research and just typing something into YouTube and saying, oh, there's the proof. Anybody can go to Antarctica because these people say they've been there. So, let's begin.
The Antarctic doesn't exist, and that it's the outer perimeter of this flat Earth. It's nonsense. It's foolishness. And I'm ashamed to have gone along with it because this is the first time that I'm looking into this.
It is not foolishness. Believing what you see or read without doing any more further research, that is what foolishness is. As far as my research goes, it is certainly not a continent. That is the conclusion you will come to if you only do basic research. A little in-depth research will reveal the truth, and that's why I'm here. So, first thing we should pay attention to, you'll notice that the planes have a peculiar thing missing: windows. So, when do you want to fly people to a certain location and not have them look out the windows unless you are fooling them about where they are flying? Let's look at the Mercator map on the screen now, the projection. What happens if you travel west from America? You'll pop out on the other side, correct? Over by Japan. Now, what happens if you travel north? Do you pop out the bottom? If you travel south, do you pop out the top? No, you don't. So, interesting little tidbit of information there. Keep that in your mind. The point that you made that I found concerning was you said that it must be a continent because people build huts there and the news goes there. And the news also went to San Bernardino, and that wasn't a real event. And the news also went to Sandy Hook. That wasn't a real event. And people can build huts anywhere. Why would they not be able to build them on the outer edge of the flat Earth? I don't understand your research or your line of reasoning, but let's move on and get into these cruises into Antarctica. First of all, you can see on the screen here that they all go to these ports only. So you'll see that that is a very small section of a gigantic continent where people would all assemble and all the little cruise ports would be there. So that's very interesting. And a lot of people like me have been working very hard to figure out what is going on in Antarctica. And so what I did was I wanted to go ahead and look into booking myself a little cruise.
But what they don't do is patrol the entire Antarctica because anybody can go there. And what I find utterly stupid is the fact that there's literally tens of thousands of people moving over Antarctica every single week.
So, the first thing I will do is show you why not everyone can go there. And the second thing is I don't usually call people liars, so I'm just going to ask for your evidence in claiming that tens of thousands of people fly across Antarctica every week. That's what you said. So show me the proof of flying across Antarctica. If you look up any flight charts, they don't fly across the continent at all. So show your evidence on that one. On the screen now, you'll see why not everyone can go to Antarctica. Because not everyone has between $40,000 and $75,000 for a 5 or 6 day trip. So I'm on this site. It's called polarcruises.com. I'm looking at all their little deals, and it looks like a scam to me because you don't need that kind of money for a trip to Antarctica. So anybody charging you $45,000 to $75,000 for a 5-day trip where you're staying in a tent and peeing in a bucket, there's a problem there. So I also looked up and tried to find out how many people fit on one of these planes, and they usually have 66 people on the plane. And if you multiply that by the ticket price of $40,000, you get about $3 million. So this is where I start to smell scam. To make that kind of money is not necessary on upcharging that much. So the first thing I did was run the site through Whoisology. Really cool site if you're looking for the owner of a site or IP information, registrar information. And when I found it, I got some other interesting news. He owns over 150 other related domains besides polarcruises.com. In fact, look at all these. This travel agency or scam center have all the Antarctic and Arctic trips in their hands. You must go through them. So that was just more fuel to my fire. Sites like penguincruise.com, Antarctica Cruise, Antarctica Tour, Antarctica Trip, Polar Bear Cruises, Antarctic Voyage, Antarctic Journey, Antarctica Journeys, Arctic Voyages, Antarctic Tour, Antarctic Vacations with a hyphen, Antarctic Trip, Antarctic Adventures, Antarctica Cruise. So, as you can see, he definitely has the corner on the market. Next up was to find out, are they even in business, or is it an all-out scam? So I searched for reviews on other sites. Obviously not their own site where they could make whatever review they want, but on other sites. First review I find is the review right here. Polar Cruises reviews. Maybe this is too late to help you, but here's our experience with Polar Cruises. They were very helpful at the beginning when we first called about a cruise. They told us there was only one cabin left on the cruise that we were interested in, and that there was a waiting list for it, which upon looking back doesn't make sense. Why sell it to us if there's a waiting list already? But we went ahead, paid the deposit, and wired the balance. 15 days before departure of the cruise, an unexpected medical issue emerged and we couldn't make the cruise. We had no trip cancellation insurance, big mistake, and immediately called Polar Cruises. After some delay, Polar Cruises told us that Oceanwide Expeditions, the ship's operator, would allow a name change for the cabin, that is, find someone else to take the cabin, but we had just 24 hours to do this, and that if we couldn't find anyone, to call them immediately to cancel our booking but with zero refund. We asked if they could help us given the extensive contacts they have, but they didn't even reply to this appeal and did absolutely nothing to help. We then called Oceanwide Expeditions and said 24 hours was too little and to do anything. After this call, Polar Cruises then informed us that we had a few more days to do the name change. One question that still remains is why Polar Cruises had given us a 24-hour deadline if we were not going to get any refund from Polar Cruises or Oceanwide anyway. In sum, our experience with Polar Cruises was not a good one, and I would never recommend them. So, you're talking about probably the theft of $25,000. Just a guess right there. Who knows how much the trip was for? Could have been $70,000, could have been $10,000. I don't know, but I was on the right track. There's a problem with taking a cruise down in Antarctica. Now, I hope you are ready for the story to get a little bit juicy. Thanks for holding on so far, because it's about to get real interesting. So, in looking at the page here that lists the employees, I'd already looked up Jim, couldn't find anything. He's the one who owns all the domains. I looked up Sharon, couldn't find much. Again, both Jim and Sharon have very non-unique names. But Chuck and his wife, Lynn, were easy to find. Here you're looking at Chuck Cross. He is a Antarctic polar expedition leader, so it says. So is his wife, but they only have one photo of themselves all online. So I mean, if you can search Google, I did here in a second, you'll see it on the screen, and that even putting her name and Bend, Oregon, where they supposedly live, turns up just that one photo and only articles that look like they come from their site or are in regards to them being travel agents. You can see here just that one picture up at the top. So that left me with one other person, and I looked her up, and I always thank my lucky stars when I see somebody with a unique name. They're usually easy to find online. Her name is Nina Spinrad. So here it talks about her being an outdoor lover, and so I began to search Spinrad, Nina, and I get a ton of results for a Dr. Richard W. Spinrad. Who is he? Well, he was named in 2014 as the NOAA Chief Scientist by Barack Obama. Then I see Mr. Spinrad was the President of Research at Oregon State before his appointment as head of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Research Center. And, of course, we know that this travel agency is based in Oregon. So, prior to that, he was the research director for the U.S. Navy. He also is part of the Global Warming Lie, as he is a direct and permanent representative to the United Nations Intercontinental Oceanographic Commission. He has been given awards from Bush and Obama, and now there's no way that this Nina is related to him, right? So, I found a obituary for a Gene Thompson, and if you're ever looking for relationships, the best place to go is obituary, since it spells it right out for you. And in Gene Thompson's obituary, he was survived by his daughter, Elena, and her husband, Dr. Richard Spinrad, and their son, Gary, and his wife, Nina Spinrad. So, for those of you following along, we now have one company who owns all the domains for Arctic and Antarctic trips. It has 5 employees. One of them is the daughter-in-law of the head honcho and President Barack Obama's selection for chief scientist for the NOAA. So that means we have a Navy veteran, a military man who has taken a military oath in charge of the ocean as chief scientist, just like all of our scientists who went to the moon, who are on the ISS or are currently or former military. Worth noting, if you spend 10, 20, 30 years in the military and then you get honorable discharge or you leave or retire, you're then considered a civilian. So if you become an astronaut, you are a civilian astronaut. So when we look closely, we can see that honestly most of what we think of as science has been militarized. Also wanted to point out, if you look at the screen now, you'll see I did some flight tracking. And I don't see any planes that are going anywhere near the Antarctic landmass, which really only makes sense when you think of Antarctica being the ring around the flat plane. If it were a giant continent on the bottom of a globe, why wouldn't we be crossing it to go from Australia to South America, etc.?
And flat earthers just don't seem to know about this. And they think that Antarctica doesn't exist and that it's a military manned base and they don't allow anybody in there. Well, anybody can go to Antarctica. And the one good thing that's come out of me investigating this is the fact that it's exposed a lot of these flat earth liars, and they don't go out there patrolling all round Antarctica. That's just stupid. And the most stupid thing of all is that some of these flat earthers think that Antarctica doesn't exist. So
next, let's talk about some of the reviews from people who have taken these cruises to Antarctica, since Tiger Dan wants to say that everyone, including some band, has gone there. We can tell when reviews are real, right? Do all people speak the same? Do they all spell correctly and use proper English and proper punctuation and grammar? Are all people always satisfied? Let's see. Oh, one other note. Do all people's names generally have more than 3 letters? We'll see. First one here is the trip exceeding their expectations. Another one from Kay and Jim here. This was the best trip ever for us. The expedition team was great and so very interesting to chat with. We got another one here from Ted and then Jan. Dear Sharon, I want to thank you for everything. You folks met and exceeded all my expectations and then some. I had the best time on this ship. Down here, hi Sharon from Jan. I don't think any of us knew what an incredible gift it would prove to be to have you upgrade our cabins and our decks. It was great to be all together. We loved the full-length windows and the balconies. Got another one here from another Susan. You may not remember, but you sold me the November Sea Explorer trip. We are now home. We wanted to thank you for the most excellent counsel. You provided the ammunition to convince us that the extended trip was the way to go. You were so right. Your recommendation for rooms was perfect. We were in room 346. They have 66 rooms on the boat, but for some reason, room 346. Sharon here says, we just returned from our trip this evening and the Antarctica trip was amazing. We saw lots of glaciers, many that looked as if they were sculpted by artists. Next, we have one from Lori. I am still processing what a phenomenal place Antarctica is. Thank you for your help in such a trip of a lifetime. I am so glad I was able to make this phenomenal trip. From Angus, the trip was amazing, exceeded my expectations. The crew was brilliant. I would not hesitate recommending this voyage and ship to anyone. Down there we have Melissa. We had an excellent trip and it ran perfectly without any hitches. Everyone in the family said it was better than they expected. We loved the trip, the leaders and the staff and the ship and the hotel. Thanks for all your help. How about from Sean? The trip was probably one of the best things I've ever done in my life. It's difficult to put into words what a great experience it was. From Ben, we had an amazing trip. We will certainly return for more fun. We have Susan again, a lot of Susans. I have just spent the past 2 hours with my client whose trip he arranged to Antarctica. We had many moments of complete emotion as he was explaining his experience to me. From Jassy, it was a really great experience for us. Big ice, mountains capped with snow, horrible wind with snow, chin strap. I don't know what that one is. Next one, the trip was really good. We had several bear encounters in the pack ice. The best one was when the male and female bears came all the way to the boat and kept circling us. The female was putting up quite a display for the male. That was really cool. Those all seem like real reviews to me. Check it out, polarcruises.com.
So the one good thing that's come out of this is that it's exposed all the liars. But so why are they lying to us? Why are they saying that Antarctica is the outer perimeter of the flat Earth?
Yeah, I'm not lying to you. So usually when you make that kind of accusation, should be followed with an apology when you see the reasons why I say it's the outer ring. And we haven't even talked yet about the midnight sun, and I'm about to talk about GPS, plus plane flights that go to the South Pole and back. So hold on tight, bud.
Now, I don't know. I don't know what their agenda is. I don't know if those people are stupid or something.
Oh man. Honey!
Yeah.
They know that I'm stupid or something.
Sorry, well, you know,
What am I gonna do?
you can't.
Maybe it's the case that they're collectively a tight-knit group of agents who are trying to put out disinformation about the flat Earth, or maybe it's the case that they're utterly stupid and they haven't even done basic research on the Antarctica. I don't know which one it is. Nobody's allowed to go down to Antarctica, and you'll probably get shot if you go within 1,000 miles of the border. It's utter nonsense. It's utter nonsense.
Oh, babe, did you do basic research on Antarctica?
No,
Oh boy. Did the other agents?
I don't think so.
Great. Now they know that we're a tight-knit group that doesn't do basic research. We're just utterly stupid. And now, intellectual scientific thoughts by Jaron. I just don't get how dumb flat earthers are. I mean, you have a simple choice. Either Earth is spinning 1,000 miles per hour, or it's not. Either it travels 21 million miles a day, or zero. Stars are either trillions of miles away, or they're lights in the sky. All that HD footage confirms NASA's in space doing great things, or they're just stealing our money. It's really sad that these guys are so intellectually stupid that they believe their own eyes. I mean, their own senses. Not me. I know where truth lies. It lies in the textbooks, provided and written by Freemason Jesuits who want a better life for me and my family. They want me to give them a run for their money, to challenge them and beat them in this game of life. Thank non-God for science. So, I wanted to talk a quick minute about GPS, and sorry for my scribbles, but hopefully this will help you understand a little better. If the map on the left was the correct map, and we needed people to think that they are on a globe, then you would put ground-based tracking everywhere. So let's call that those red sticks on the map on the left. Then, when someone stands, say, at the 3 dots in South America, then it would coincide with our GPS, or Global Positioning System, which would be the 3 dots on the right. We could just say that those 3 dots were being tracked by big metal satellites orbiting above your head, when in actuality they were ground-based stations. Now, if someone thinks that they are going from, say, South America to Antarctica, on the right, they would actually be just doing the same thing as we see on the left. Same thing with Australia. Going from Australia to the South Pole would look the same way on the left as on the right. And as people fly around the world, the GPS simply tells them where they're going. So even though you're just doing a big circle, the GPS makes you think you're on a globe. So, I did find some flights that leave Australia, head down, and they say they cross the South Pole, turn around, and return. So from the 3 places in Australia where these planes leave, all would take 12 hours according to the site, but all distances are 8,000 miles plus. If they were truly going to the 90-degree mark at the South Pole, well, 8,000 miles in 12 hours is 666 miles per hour, and the top speed of a 747 jet is 550 miles per hour. So this means you simply do not actually go to the 90-degree mark. Also, the plane has 366 seats with an average price of about $3,000. So $3,000 times 366 is well over $1 million. The plane uses 36,000 gallons per 10 hours of flight, so I'll even give them 60,000 gallons for their 12-hour flight, charging $2.50 a gallon, and that's the price of gas in California. That's $150,000. So off $1 million take, they spend $150,000 on gas. Pretty nice profit to fly in a circle.
Tea's gone cold and wondering why got out of bed at all. The morning rain clouds out my window, and I can see it all. And even if I could, it'd all be great. But your picture of my wall, it reminds me that it's not so bad. It's not so bad.
Well, I wanted to address the flat earthers harping on and on about no time-lapse footage of the 24-hour Antarctic midnight sun. Well, I can assure you, as a southern hemisphere scientist, a very seasoned one, the midnight sun does occur. I've seen it with my own eyes. And yes, there should be hundreds of these videos out there, but keep in mind, we are very busy down here doing science. So I will humor you. I brought a team down, courtesy of NASA, and they brought a high-tech panoramic 360 time-lapse camera, whole rig, very nice system. And they were able to capture the midnight sun. Here it is. As you can see, Jaron, we really do have a 24-hour midnight sun down here in the southern hemisphere. Keep in mind that humble pie is best served with a warm cup of hot chocolate. I do expect a full apology. Shit! Son of a bitch. Damn it, Brian.
Tea's gone cold and wondering why got out of bed at all. The morning rain clouds out my window, and I can see it all. And even if I could, it'd all be great. But your picture of my wall, it reminds me that it's not so bad. It's not so bad.
Let's look back at the midnight sun now. This is a big issue. Based on current cosmology, if the Earth is a ball, then the North Pole and the South Pole have to be the complete same but opposite, when one is facing the sun versus when the other is facing the sun. For example, Norway gets all-day sun from April through August, and that's 400 miles from the 60-degree marker north. Well, if that's true, then if the Earth is a ball, the same areas opposite must be getting the same no sun in the south on the same days. Well, webcams will clearly show that it is quite a bit different in Antarctica than it is in the north. For instance, the north may get all-day sun, while the south is still getting a little bit of sun, when they should be getting nothing but darkness. I'll show some webcams to prove this point. So, the first question you might ask is, of course, well, what is the midnight sun and where can we see it? And if we take a look at the answers we get from Yahoo's Answers.com, which I'm sure has nothing but the truth, right? It says, what months is Antarctica in total darkness? And they answer, oh, Antarctica is in total darkness all of September, October, November, December, January, February, and most of March. Well, this person didn't realize that that is the summer for the South, and they're not in all darkness for those months. It's ridiculous. So we'll look a little bit lower where we get NASA's answer. We know NASA never lies to us. NASA says that Antarctica has 6 months of darkness and 6 months of summer, and that the sun only rises and sets one time a year. That is complete and total bullshit. We'll see that in webcam footage in a minute. You'll see a little bit lower than their post is a post about the myth of the midnight sun, because it's a myth. That's exactly why, and I've said this many times, if somebody's lying to you, there's a reason, right? So we're lied to as kids about the polar sun or the midnight sun in the south and the midnight sun in the north, if it's a lie, there's a reason behind it. Wouldn't you agree? Now you'll see here there's a letter from somebody who works down at the Antarctic, and she's explaining when she gets to see the sun, and she says, of course, the same thing, that she sees 6 months of sun and 6 months of darkness. Simply not true. We'll look at webcam footage which proves it. And she even says at the end, do you know why we get this? Well, it's because the Earth goes around the sun in 365 days. That completes a year. Okay, now we're going to look at some webcam footage, and from this we should be able to figure out really easily that Antarctica can't possibly be a continent on the bottom of the globe. I wanted to point this out. If you do see a black circle appear over the center of the sun, this article says that on occasion, because of the brightness of the center of the sun, it will mess up the image sensors on the camera, which creates a black dot right in the center of the sun. You can believe that if you want. I'll leave that up to you. If somebody researches it though, there's probably some good information that you could find as to why we are seeing a black dot in the middle of the sun when it crosses the view of the camera. So we're going to be looking at 4 different stations. The first one is Palmer. And that's right there. Second station we're looking at is Casey. And that is on the other side over here. That's one of the Australians' bases. The next one is Davis Station. And we can see that one right here. And then out on the island we have, this one here is Scott Base, another Australian one. And then out on the island we have McMurdo, which is near Shackleton's Hut. So this is a webcam footage, and I will show you wherein lies the lie. So you see the sun come and go from your upper right to your upper left. And let's watch the shadow of the stick that's straight in front of us. So the kind of green one, straight ahead. Let's watch, keep an eye on that shadow, and you'll notice that the camera simply resets. So here comes the shadow towards us. Whoop, why don't we get to see the shadow go around? Notice that the shadow of the green flag is coming around, but we never see it go in front of the green flag. Why is that? Because the sun isn't going around the continent. If it was, we would see the sun go around, then it would be behind us. If the sun was behind us, the shadow of the green flag would be in front of it. But that never happens. What happens is the sun is coming in from the northeast, coming across the horizon and going off to the northwest. You can even watch the sky. If you watch the sky, you'll see it is circling northeast to northwest, not circling around us. Again, if it was going around us, we would see that flag pointing straight forward. So this is just one of the examples. I've got some more footage here to show you. But if you just go look, best place to go would be www.antarctica.gov.au/webcams/ you can put Casey, Davis, Palmer, and you're going to get webcams for those particular stations. Pay close attention to the date and time up in the upper left-hand corner, and you'll see that there's definitely an issue with what we're taught. One of the easiest ways to prove that also is the amount of time that it would get all-day sun or all-day night versus the North Pole. And we've got people who live near the North Pole, in Norway, in Alaska, in Canada, and those people can tell us what they see. And what they see does not match the opposite down in Antarctica, meaning if in the North Pole they're getting 4 months of full sun, then at that exact time the South Pole should be getting 4 months of full no sun. It doesn't happen. At the most they get 6 weeks. So it simply means we don't live on a globe. Now you'll notice here that they start, when the sun starts getting really low, they'll actually blow a fog or a smoke or could be even snow. I don't even know what they're blowing. But you'll see if you look straight ahead that there's a blower that blows along the horizon. The reason for that is so that people who are down there don't get to see what the sun is actually doing, which is not circling their heads. Now, I will admit that for 6 weeks a year, Antarctica does get full sun. I've seen it on these webcam footages, but it is not, they don't have a view of the sun. So I know it doesn't make sense, and I fully admit that this is something that we need to research, because somehow when the sun leaves to the northwest and circles all the way on the other side of the Earth in its daily path, somehow it is remaining bright in Antarctica. Now, is that because of something in the atmosphere? Is it being some sort of reflection? Not sure. But it does prove two things. A, that it needs to be studied. B, that it's not a globe. Because if it was a globe, you would simply see the sun do a complete circle above your head. Now we can see this flag straight in front of us. Tell me, why don't we see, where's the shadow of the flag at the, I don't know, what would you say, probably from 7 o'clock till midnight. As far as a clock, we don't ever see the shadow there. See how the shadow starts at about 5 o'clock, or no, it's about 7 o'clock, and rotates counterclockwise. We see it come all the way up to about 1 and disappear every single time. That again comes down to, if they're lying to you, there's a reason. If things are real, you would have a 24-hour webcam. Think of the ISS. We don't get to see 24 hours of footage from space. Just like we don't get to see 24 hours of footage from Antarctica. But you can watch pandas for 24 hours. Or you can watch the grave of Andy Warhol. And so what I'm saying, as I've said a million times, is use your head. Why wouldn't they show you 24-hour footage from Antarctica? It's because it doesn't match what's in textbooks, because it's not true what's in textbooks, because it is not a continent on the bottom of a big ball, mostly because you can't live on a ball. Watch this again. Keep an eye on the clock up there, the date and time in the upper left-hand corner, and watch the sun as it comes across the horizon, but it comes from the northeast, goes to the northwest, because in Antarctica, the sun's going to come into your view and then leave your view as it does its circle, its daily path throughout the flat plane that we call Earth. So, I do have some other webcam footage, but I'm going to probably end this video a little early since I didn't want to go too long and I've already gone half hour. So, the other video cam footage I have I will show in a separate video, but basically it's just going to touch on the problem with the midnight sun. The webcam footage shows the months of October and November when it's supposedly supposed to be nothing but daylight, and it will show that it clearly gets dark. And it also gets dark in late January and February, where we're told that there's a whole stretch of 6 months where it would stay dark and 6 months that it's light. Again, we could just keep our eye on what we're seeing in front of us now. Watch that green flag right in front of you. Watch as the shadow goes around in a half circle and then stops and resets and starts over. This is clear evidence that they are adjusting or faking webcam footage in order to prove to you something that is not true. And if somebody's doing that, there's only one reason why they would be lying to you. It's because they're hiding the truth. The truth being that the continent of Antarctica is not a continent.
I'm watching this film, nothing to do with this foolishness of a flat earth, but I'm watching this film and I get around, minute whatever, and I nudge Paul and I said, Paul, this movie just disproved the flat earth.
It's the middle of summer. Check the time, it's just after 12 o'clock. It's 12 o'clock midnight though.
can't see it all. And even if I could, it'd all be great. By your picture of my wall, it reminds me that it's not so bad, it's not so bad.
He documents it!
In case I don't see ya.
You can watch him!
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Yeah.
FlatEarthDave.com. Please get the app for $3. I mean, support Flat Earth Dave if you can. He's on our side, clearly.
Close your eyes.
Wake up, wake up, wake up.
This world is not what you think it is.
Close your eyes.
This world is not what you think it is. Go, go.